All right, let's jump into it. If you're here with us, I'm guessing you're looking to bring back a little of that honeymoon feeling in your marriage. You know, after 20 years, things can get a little, shall we say, familiar. But trust me, you are definitely not alone in wanting to shake things up a bit.
So we're doing a deep dive today, taking a close look at this article from the Amjad Izhar blog Views and Reviews. It's called 11 Ways to Strengthen Your Husband-Wife Bond After 20 Years of Marriage.
And you know, honestly, this one really got me thinking. It's not about those big dramatic gestures you see in the movies. It's about, like, the smaller everyday things, the stuff that can actually make a real difference in the long run.
It is refreshing, isn't it? Kind of reminds you that building a lasting relationship isn't about, like, ignoring the routines you build together. It's more about finding ways to put more meaning into those everyday moments.
And yeah, maybe throwing in a fun surprise every now and then.
Exactly. You don't have to climb Mount Everest every single day, right?
Yes.
Sometimes it's the little things that mean the most, like bringing your partner their favorite coffee without them asking. And speaking of knowing what your partner wants, the article starts off talking about communication.
Which, I mean, seems obvious. But they emphasize going beyond the surface level, not just how was your day. It's more about actually opening up, sharing those deeper things. Hopes and dreams, fears, or even just something silly that made you laugh that day. Yeah, it's like remembering what brought you together in the first place and making sure your partner still feels seen and heard, even after all this time.
Exactly. Which, now that you mention it, reminds me of that whole love languages idea from Gary Chapman's book. Have you heard of that one?
So it's like you could be showering your partner with gifts all the time.
Yeah.
But if their love language is quality time, they might not even register it as love. You really got to learn how to speak your partner's language, you know?
100%. And it's just as important to really listen to your partner as it is to express yourself. There's this marriage researcher, John Gottman, and he calls communication the lifeblood of a relationship. Can't just be one person talking and the other one just nodding along. It's got to be a two-way street, right? Giving and receiving.
That's so important. And speaking of giving and receiving, the article goes on to talk about surprises, which, okay, I know what you're thinking, cheesy, right? But it's not what you think.
They aren't talking about those over-the-top romantic gestures. It's more about the little thoughtful things. Those are the ones that actually matter, especially after being together for 20 years. Like, I don't know about you, but I'd much rather my partner surprise me with my favorite takeout after a long day than plan some big trip to Paris that throws my whole schedule out of whack.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's like those little love notes, but instead of writing them down, you're weaving them into everyday life, you know?
Love notes in the fabric of everyday life. I like that.
See, it's not about those grand gestures. It's about the little embers that keep the fire going day after day.
Exactly.
And you know what else those embers need?
Space. Oh, that's interesting.
Because the article also talks about giving each other space, which might seem counterintuitive, right?
It does go against what we're often told, like, shouldn't being close mean spending all our time together.
Yeah, exactly.
But this article makes a good point. Even though you're a couple, you're still two separate people. You each need time to do your own thing, recharge, and grow.
There's that great quote. It's like, let there be spaces in your togetherness. It's by Khalil Gibran. And it always resonated with me, but actually putting it into practice, especially after 20 years of marriage, how do you do that? It's not like we can just take off to different continents for months at a time.
Right.
And you don't have to. It could be something small, like encouraging your partner to finally take that pottery class they've been talking about, or even just giving them the space to enjoy their hobbies without feeling obligated to join in every single time.
You know, it's easy to think that after 20 years, everything there is to know about your partner, like you've got them all figured out.
Oh, tell me about it. And that's actually something that really resonated with me in this article, the way it talks about the need for continuous learning and discovery, even within a marriage.
Yeah, because people change, right? They evolve. And that includes our partners. It's like we have to approach our relationship with the same curiosity we had when we first met.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just because you've known someone for however many years, it doesn't mean you stop learning from them.
Yeah.
Dr. Sue Johnson, she's a big name in relationship therapy, says something like, love is a constant process of tuning in, connecting, missing, and reconnecting.
Wow.
It's an ongoing thing, not just some stationary point you reach, right?
That's a really good point. And speaking of ongoing, the article doesn't shy away from conflict. Because let's be real, disagreements are going to happen in any relationship, no matter how strong the bond is.
Right. It's about how you handle those disagreements, you know?
So you're saying it's not about avoiding conflict completely, but more about, like, learning to navigate those choppy waters together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can actually be opportunities to understand each other even better if you approach them with the right mindset.
Which reminds me of this time my partner and I were planning a vacation, and we had completely different ideas of what we wanted to do.
Oh, no.
I was all about relaxing on a beach somewhere, soaking up some sun, maybe finally finishing that book I've been meaning to read. But my partner, they wanted adventure. Hiking, exploring, the whole shebang. We were at a total standstill.
It's funny how two people can have such different visions of a dream vacation.
Right. But instead of getting frustrated, I remembered something we talked about earlier, that active listening thing.
So I took a deep breath and really tried to get where they were coming from. Why was this adventure vacation so important to them?
Turns out they were feeling super burnt out from work and just craved that, like, exhilaration and feeling of accomplishment. And you know what? As soon as I understood their why, it was so much easier to figure out something we'd both enjoy.
That is a perfect example of what this article is talking about. Handling conflict with patience and understanding. It's not always easy, that's for sure.
Definitely not. It's way easier to get defensive, but that just makes things worse.
It puts up walls.
And you know what helps break down those walls? Laughter.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, never underestimate a good laugh with your person.
There's actually this researcher, Dr. Peter McGraw, and he calls laughter a social lubricant. It releases endorphins, lowers stress, good stuff.
It's like hitting the reset button, you know? All that tension just kind of melts away.
I love that.
And speaking of hitting reset, the article talks about something else that I thought was interesting. Reminiscing.
Oh, like taking a trip down memory lane together.
Yeah. It sounds kind of cheesy, but honestly, I think it's brilliant.
Right.
Because it's like a reminder of all the good times, all the reasons why you fell in love in the first place. And it's not just about feeling good either.
Right.
Gary Chapman, the love languages guy, he talks about how even just remembering those positive memories can be a way of expressing love through actions. Like you're saying, hey, I cherish these moments we've had together. They still mean the world to me.
Exactly. But as much as it's important to look back, we also need to look forward, right? This article, it stresses the importance of setting new goals together as a couple.
Which makes sense, like saying couples who plan their future together stay together.
Yeah. It's about having shared dreams, something exciting to look forward to.
Like you're actively deciding where you want to go as a couple instead of just letting life happen to you.
Exactly. And that shared purpose, that excitement for what's next, that can be a real game changer, especially after 20 years.
You know, it's funny.
That.
We always talk about spicing things up when it comes to, well, the bedroom.
Right.
But this article really highlights how important it is to keep things interesting outside the bedroom, too. It's like you got to nurture all those different parts of your connection.
Absolutely. The emotional intimacy, the laughter, even just having those little adventures together.
Those everyday adventures. And that doesn't mean you have to be glued to each other's side 24/7 either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we were saying before about giving each other space.
Right. Finding that balance, you know, togetherness and independence.
It's a dance, for sure.
Definitely. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I'm thinking about all the couples out there listening.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and maybe lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But the good news is, it really doesn't have to be some huge, complicated thing to rekindle that spark.
That's the best part. It's the small things, those everyday gestures, those little deposits into the love bank, as they say.
Love is a verb, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a choice you make every single day.
It is.
And like anything else worthwhile, it takes effort, attention, and a willingness to, grow and change together.
Beautifully said. And remember, there's no magic formula here. What works for one couple might not work for another. It's about figuring out what works for you two and committing to making it a priority.
So how about this? A little challenge for you and your partner tonight.
Okay, I like it.
Take a few minutes to think back on those early days of your relationship.
What first attracted you to each other? What did you love doing together back then?
Sometimes just revisiting those memories can be so powerful.
It's amazing how those feelings come rushing back.
It's true.
And then, after you've done that, think about one small, concrete action you can take this week to bring back some of that magic.
Maybe it's planning a surprise date night, or trying a new activity together, or even just putting your phones away and having a real conversation.
It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Even the smallest gesture can have a ripple effect.
Exactly. Create some waves. You've got this.